space and time that I shared my my introductory remarks earlier. So I really want to just move us right into this session, which is focused on how theaters can sustain and grow the field of teaching artists. Our facilitators for this session are Johamy Morales, Education Director at Seattle Children's Theater, and she's a TCG board member, and Korbi Adams, Director of Education and School Programs at Childsplay. And with that, I think all I'll suggest is that when we get to the point of people having comments or questions or whatever, again, under participants, you'll find the hand raise feature. Please click on your hand raise under participants. And with that, I'm turning it to Johamy and Korbi. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hola. I'm very excited to be here with you guys today and be able to connect and dive in a little bit deeper. Johamy Morales, she, her, hers, and I represent Seattle Children's Theater. Korbi.
I'm Korbi, she, her, hers, and I'm with Childsplay.
So we are very thankful for even just the previous session. Nikki and Kati, thank you so much for leading us in that session and getting us started. I feel like it was a really great way for us to build a foundation to then launch into this session. It was also just really great to hear from the people on the call and to get a sense of what people are thinking and what's on people's minds, and how curriculum has also an impact for us to think about how it relates to teaching artists and educators in the room. In this teaching artist session, we will be diving into it being a little bit more of a working session, where our hope is that there will be a continued rich discussion and an avenue for us to support each other in this time with our work. I think all of us are coming in from very different areas, perspectives, and our communities are very different from one another. But I think there are a lot of commonalities in the differences that we can work together in the session today and hopefully take something out of this session that is meaningful for us to engage in change and impact as we move forward. So I'm just going to talk a little bit of just some logistics on how we're going to set this session up, and then we'll start digging in. The purpose of this session will be for time for reflection and identifying inequities and challenges among our teaching artist cohorts, or also our teaching artist program, however that relates to you. Also, if you are a teaching artist, thinking about some of those places of inequities that might impact your work as well. Suggestions, ideas, and tools, we want that to be part of the conversation in order for all of us to feel that we can take something and take action for some sort of change in our organizations, and hopefully impact our teaching artist program or our teaching artist cohort in a positive way. And then the third thing is being able to share with one another and learn from each other. I think it will continue to be important for us just to acknowledge within the crisis of the pandemic that we are within, and also the experience that we have right now with our civil unrest. These are really important moments in our history, but also in our communities that are going to continue to impact our work and how we work with our teaching artists. And also thinking about our teaching artists are one of the most vulnerable people right now in our industry. And I think alongside with that are our fellows, interns, and apprentices within our programming. And also just to think about that this is time for us, for you as an individual to be able to give yourself some time and space and care in this process. We're gonna ask that you guys have some sort of a writing utensil and some paper for you to write on. Feel free to move in and out of the session in attend to yourself throughout. And we will be using the raise hand function throughout when we get into discussion. And Korbi and I's role is going to be to facilitate, help guide, and listen in support of the work that we'll be diving into. Korbi, do you have anything you want to add on?
I think just to underscore what you were saying, that when we were talking earlier, I think you brought up a really nice point of that, like, oftentimes when we're in a conference setting and we're having large group dialogue, the conversations seem really, really big, and sometimes it can feel hard to move from thought to action. And so that's how we geared today's session, is really hoping that we are going to listen to each other and provide tools and suggestions and ideas that hold each other accountable, and that we can all leave with action items that we can begin to work on in our own programs and with our own communities.
And to help us just kind of set the tone of those conversations and reflection, we are going to put up a group agreements on the chat, and those group agreements, I hope everyone can agree to as we go into conversations. But also, if you have something to add on, we would love for you to let us know, and we can definitely add that on. Being respectful to each other and the work that we do, listening actively, use I statements, help create a brave space, a virtual brave space, an environment for healthy discourse. Allow there to be silence. I know sometimes it's a little bit hard, but I think giving ourselves in this space some silence is also a good thing. Don't make assumptions. Recognize power dynamics, and you will also recognize some of those power dynamics within your own groups as we break out into smaller groups. Ask questions, take space, make space, and then welcoming different perspectives. Is there anything else anybody else would like to add on? You can raise your hand. And we can add on to it if you need something else that will make you feel safe and supported in this space. Okay.
Great. We're going to kick off the session with a writing exercise. So go ahead and grab that piece of paper and writing utensil. We wanted to give everyone space to really reflect on their teaching artist program and their teaching artist team before we jump into dialogue together. So our first prompt for you to just take a couple of minutes and write your thoughts out. You won't necessarily have to share these, but we will offer space for people to share. So just know that as you're heading into this exercise. We wanted to bring all of our teaching artists into this space. So think about, what are the strengths of your teaching artist team or the strengths of your teaching artist program? hopefully we could all write about this all day long, but find a place to pause. And then if you would like to just, in a classroom space, we would like popcorn this out. So if you would like to share some of the strengths of your teaching artists and your teaching artist program, go ahead and raise your hand in the participants box, and we can just hear a couple of people that want to share.
It's also important to keep in mind, I think, that as we are working so hard in continuing to shift and pivot in order to impact our students and the people that we're working with, that we also take some time to celebrate and acknowledge the hard work that we're all doing. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to care for ourselves, to actually share some of that with each other.
Lauren, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, I'm Lauren Imhoff. I'm representing South Carolina Children's Theater today, and I'll just kind of go through my bullet points that I just wrote down. Our team of teaching artists, one of the strengths is their years of experience. Many of them have been with us for years and years and years, and that also allows us to have a strong comfort in the expectations of knowing that when we send them to other places or when we have them host programming within our building, that they are trusted, and we know exactly that the students are going to have a wonderful experience with that. So those are two things. And they're also very diverse in their expertise. Each one of them has a strong forte for the age group that they're teaching or the topics that they're teaching. And then our program in general, there's a need for it in the community, which I feel like they're attest to a strength. And we've been seeing growth throughout the past few years of how many people are reaching out. So those were strengths that I kind of thought of moving with our teaching artist staff.
Thank you. Marcy, I see your hand up.
Hi, I'm with Milwaukee Chamber Theater, and we do primarily playwriting residencies, among other things. So I would say some of the greatest strengths of our program is a real one-on-one connection to students, very individualized content, meeting students where they are, classroom individualized content, because we want to meet them at their group skill set too, but being mindful of individual skill sets that they need to build and already have. For that reason, I think empathy is big. I think there is a pervasive atmosphere of encouraging natures, and more than anything else, a belief in the legitimacy of young voices.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Juliet, I see your hand.
Hi, everybody. Here, I'll pop on video for a second. What a lovely thing to bring our teaching artists into the room. Love that. I would concur with some of the other things said, but they are artists, Timeline's team, so they are all practicing all the time, in addition to being teaching artists, which I think is really important part of that team. They are critical, and I mean that in a good way, very happy to ask difficult questions and bring them up. They are loving. Love is sort of at the core of our teaching team values. They are representative of the community of students that we work with, and they are all passionate activists, but use different mediums to express their activism. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine?
I could echo a lot of what's been shared already, and I won't go through all my bullet points, but especially in light of the conversations we're having right now, one of the strengths that I wrote down and then I thought, that surprised me because I didn't expect it, was to write down that our teaching artists have amazing connections with other local artists that our institution may not have. And as we talk about magnifying our impact and our partnerships and our responsiveness, that struck me, that they are a network. We are, I'm Catherine from People's Light. We are in the Philly suburbs, about an hour outside. And so our community draws from Philly, but is not based in Philly. And I'm so aware that our teaching artists who straddle multiple geographies and roles as artists and educators are a resource to us in who else they work with.
Thank you. Laura Reiner?
I wrote down many things, but I think the one that that is the most vital that I want to share is that they have such an impassioned belief in our young people's voices and for who these young people are as individuals right now, and also who they're going to be in the world at a later date.
Nice. And I have 3 more hands, and then that'll be all of our sharing for this round. Laura Berger.
Hi, everybody. Again, just really reflecting on what everybody has said, but really adding that I think our teaching artists are a beautiful balance of eagerness to learn and to expand the way that they are doing their work as teaching artists, but also an eagerness to really provide feedback and accountability to us as an organization. And that all of that comes from truly a deep love of the arts and a deep love of the work that they do.
Thank you. Jillian?
Thank you. I'm Jillian. I'm the education director at Bookit, Repertory Theater in Seattle. And first, I want to acknowledge that although our teaching artists are being centered in this conversation right now, they aren't actually here with us. And because we are the ones who give them work, we don't always get the honest perspective from what teaching artists are talking about amongst themselves. So things that we are seeing as strengths might also be obfuscating weaknesses within our own programs. So, wanted to say that. Yeah. Bookit is also, I started recognizing this morning, and it's just really true that Bookit's senior organization level is all very new. Most of us have been with the organization for under a year, and our co-founders are leaving after 30 years of running the organization. So we have the unique opportunity to really look at the structures that we have and see and reflect on those and see, like, okay, well, what's actually working for us and what do we want to be able to change? And that gave us the unique privilege of being able to use the Teaching Artists Guild's pay rate calculator to model how we are paying all of our teaching artists. Our teaching artists themselves, we have a really wide range of skill level, both from what they're able to teach and also where they are in our careers. We also have a very small group of teaching artists, maybe only about 5 to 8. But that allows us, because of that skill level and interest level, it means we can pair people up where they need to have more training. So our teaching artists are being supported in the classroom and learning more skills, and that the teaching artist providing those skills can also be paid to mentor that teaching artist. And then, as everyone's been saying, that true passion to really connect with children and champion their voices, sometimes almost championing the voices of children over their own welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Sarah, you'll be our last. Sure.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm with Chicago Shakespeare Theater. We work with our teaching artists in kind of a different way. While we do have some programs for students, a lot of the times we're working with our teaching artists through professional development with teachers, primarily English teachers. And I would say that one of the most amazing thing about the folks that we work with is that they're so committed to partnering with us and actively problem solving the best way to create community amongst teachers in any given space, so that the teachers can then go have the tools to create that community inside their classrooms, which is always such a challenge. And because we're primarily working with English teachers rather than theater teachers or drama teachers, we're giving them the tools. Our teaching artists work with them to give them the tools to sort of activate complex text in a dramatic way, or in an active way, in an on your feet way. And one of our English teachers called it 3D close reading. And I would say that our teaching artists who mostly have backgrounds in theater are so committed to bridging that gap to helping empower teachers unlock complex texts, and giving their students the tools to do that too.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So we're gonna jump into a second question for us to dig into a little deeper. It is, though, exciting just to hear what has been shared, and the collective power that lies in the work that we're doing, and that we are all proud of that we're doing. So just keeping that in mind as a way that we're not alone sometimes. And I know that sometimes we feel like it in the work that we're doing, but we have an army of such passionate and dedicated teaching artists. And we all have some highlights in how that is being executed in the work. So for the second question for you guys to dive into, through the lens of an equity, what are the biggest challenges that your teaching artist or your teaching artist program faces currently? And this could be a list, or this could be a couple of things that you want to write about, but take a little bit of time to digest in that. And I'll just repeat it one more time. Through the lens of an equity, what are the biggest challenges that your teaching artist cohort and or program faces currently? I'm gonna give you guys maybe like 2 more minutes. Go ahead and start wrapping up your last thoughts. And we're going to open it up to the group to share some of the challenges that you are experiencing. If you can go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to share.
And we're going to have time in small groups to really dig into what those challenges are and the context behind them. So you can, if you want to, just name what that challenge is. You don't need to necessarily give all of the context of what that is. I think we have one person, Mallory.
Sorry, was muted. So my pool currently needs more representation and diversity in it. But beyond that, I was also thinking about how most of my teaching artists are all college educated people, predominantly women, and that makes them have a certain viewpoint, and that then most of them are freelance workers. So they come to me, but they also usually have a restaurant job or usually work for as a teaching artist for another institution. And so that is a hard life to maintain, particularly as you grow older and start to have a family. And so that's a big challenge, just looking at the age of our teaching artists.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. We have Anne.
Hi. Right now, the biggest challenge through an equity lens that we're dealing with has to do with technology and how much that's impacting our students in Philadelphia, and how frustrating it is that they don't have what they need in a lot of ways to get the most out of their education in general and our programs. I mean, I guess that's everyone's nodding. Everyone knows. I don't have to go on. Technology.
Thank you. And last call if anybody wants to share any challenges that they're facing.
Courtney?
Yes, I could. Thought I could unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, you can hear me? Okay, great. I was just to add to what's already been stated, I would love to have the capacity to really have a robust training program for our TAs as far as professional development, as far as like having like a paid apprentice program.
Oh, we got your video, but now your sound is gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having technological issues. I don't even know. But speaking to the last point, right? Anyhow, that like one way to get diversity in your teaching artist core is to really like identify talent and groom them and train them and so forth. So that takes capacity, and that's a challenge because I can like spot people who will be great, and how to like help support them and get them where they need to be.
Thank you, Courtney. All right, shall we move to the last question that we have for you guys? All right.
Yeah, so look at that list of challenges or pull from what you've heard our colleagues share, and think about the statement of, if I could change one structural thing about my teaching artist program, I would do X and Y. Why is that important to you, to your organization, and to your teaching artists?
And as you're thinking about this question, writing and reflecting on it, making sure that you do think about the organization and the mission, right? And also thinking about teaching artists, as we have shared and acknowledged that they are not in the room, but we do work with them, and we have a certain understanding of why this work is important. So just thinking about that.
And we'll give you about 1 more minute. So find a place to wrap up, and then same deal. If you would like to share, please raise your hand in the participants list. Dawn.
All right, hi. So I'm with Theater Horizon, which is also a Philadelphia area theater, but we're in the suburbs. And many of our programs are not on site, they're out at schools. And a lot of it is with teaching elementary school aged kids. So with that part of our program in particular, in order to staff it, we have about 40 teaching artists on staff at any given time. But one thing I'm always looking for is making sure that we maintain a high quality in addition to just reaching a lot of students. So a part of me always wants to have a smaller amount of teaching artists so we can really invest in them, so we can pay them better, so we can support their lifestyle, so they're not trying to freelance so much and sort of scrape this crazy life together. Yet, as soon as I say that, I want to contradict myself, because I also love the professional resources that our teaching artists bring. I love that we get to give a lot of people opportunity in that, you know, we're often a first or second time for some of our younger teaching artists just starting out. So I'm actually very mixed on how I want to deal with that. But I do wish we could invest more in our teaching artists and give them a more reliable lifestyle and more professional development, and more oversight, which we just don't have the bandwidth to do with our current format.
Mm-hmm. Julie?
Say it.
Johamy, did you have something?
No, go for it.
I just want to say that I have the exact same wish that Dawn has for hers. That's the problem that we have too. We have a lot of teaching artists, but we wish we could provide them with a little more structured, a little more reliable income so that it would be something that they could count on rather than having to piece together so much freelance. And having been a freelancer in the past as well, I appreciate the work that goes into the teaching artist and what they have to do to prepare. And I feel like more of a financial support for that would feel more equitable for them in terms of this is the amount I've put into it and this is the amount that I receive.
Mm-hmm. And then there's Catherine.
Yes to what everyone's been saying, and I'll add on to it that the tug of war between how many people we're working with at any given moment and really focusing on them also becomes a part of how we support them as larger artists. If they have a foot in the world as in their own discipline as well as teaching, we always want them to be able to say yes when a new opportunity comes along, whether that's the role they auditioned for or something out of town. But of course it puts us in jeopardy if we were planning on or have already begun a partnership or marketed something based on their unique skill set. So yeah, I think some of how we invest in people and have master artists and junior teaching artists working together, all of it, we want to be able to support not only their teaching lifestyle, but their artistic opportunities to say yes as well.
So on that note, let's we're going to go ahead and shift to a smaller group session. So we're going to throw a couple of things for you guys to work on. We'll give you approximately around 20 minutes to kind of get into those groups, get a little deeper into the conversation and actually tackle together some of the things that either you have shared as a whole group here or also that if you want to share some things that maybe you didn't share in the bigger group that you want to bring to that group. So before we send you guys off, so we would like for you guys to think about the next two things is to share within your group what those two biggest challenges, challenges among your teaching artist program. And as a group, we want you guys to work together to figure out one or two ways that you guys could tackle that particular thing that is brought up to the group. So you decide as a group if you want to share, which I think there will be a lot of commonality. I think even just the things that were shared today are a lot of the challenges and also strengths that my program also has at SCT. And so as opposed to trying to work on the bigger thing, how can you work together on maybe one or two things together and see what comes out of that. And then we'd love for someone in the group to go ahead and maybe be able to report back to the group in terms of what was discussed and also what are some of the things that you as an individual or as a group there decide these are the things, the one or two things that we can work on in the next year. And it might take longer than that in terms of actually being able to implement some of the ideas. But I think just being able to say that these are the one thing or the two things that I can work on might give us a little bit of sense of moving forward versus being paralyzed when we think about the whole thing. And so that is going to be our goal and intention in this session or in the next phase of small group session. So are there any questions of what I'm asking? And I will go ahead and put it in the chat to remind you guys what we're asking for so that you have it in a written format as well. All right. And in the meantime, if we can have, Amelia, if you can go ahead and set us up into groups and we will bring you guys back in soon.
And then is there a way for us to just check and see if anyone accidentally got in a room alone?
Yeah, I'm checking right now. I think I moved everyone out. Oh, Allison went and joined a breakout room. It looks like no one's alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. One time I got shuffled into a breakout room alone and it was really sad, and we were just like alone in the internet. You're like, is anyone coming? No?
Yeah, I set up the rooms, and then it looks like a few people left, and there are a few people in solo rooms, but I shuffled them around.
Thank you.
People.
And Amelia, can we send like a, I don't know if that's possible, send like a maybe like a 10-minute and a 5-minute and a 3-minute reminder kind of thing?
Yeah. And so you want them there like in total 25 minutes?
Yeah, I was just thinking around that.
So we'll do a reminder in like 15 then.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to know, like, you know, not being in the room and being like, what do people need? Yeah.
I wish there was like an observe function where you could just kind of like look at the rooms and see their faces if they're talking or if they're not.
If you want, I can like send you to rooms. Like I can assign you to rooms and you can go in and then come back and I can send you to other ones. If you want.
Yeah, I don't know if that's disruptive or not disruptive. So I don't know.
Noise? No, okay. It was my internet. What's that?
Top of the session, that was a really nice like overview and introduction.
Hold on. I am having a hard time hearing you.
I am also.
Sounds a little like distorted, your voice.
Is it better now or no?
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Oh, okay. So it's muted and unmuted. I don't know. I think my microphone.
Robot. No. I'm sorry, you were saying?
Oh, I was just saying your introduction was really lovely at the top of this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's just so hard to know what people are, you know, to read people. And I'm just, you know, just trying to give everyone like, this is the information, this is what we're expecting, this is from the top. And also it's so interesting that, I mean, it's great though that there was a larger response to want to share what their strengths are, and versus challenges, it was almost like people didn't want to share. I wonder what that's about.
Well, challenges are a lot harder to talk about to a whole room. Right. I was thinking we probably shouldn't have shared the last question. That might have been a good transition just right into breakout rooms. After I asked people to share, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done this.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. But I just think, you know, yeah. I mean, I think it's a hard balance to find, you know, like to have a balance between like, you know, everything can't be lollipops and sunshine, but also like everything can't be like, you know, downer, because then it feels like we're not productive. So being able to find like, and I think the thing that I'd love for us to, and like actually you should bring it up because it was something that you shared with me when we talked yesterday about how it's important to know the strengths and challenges, because that's also going to inform how we can approach what did you say, strengths, how we can approach the challenges, and that actually the strengths could help empower you know, what those challenges are in a way that we can actually create change. So anyways.
FYI, I'm gonna hop out really quick just and check in on Allison because she's alone in a breakout room and bring her back. But if anyone joins, I'll be right back and can assign them to a room.
Great.
Cool. And then what time did we go into rooms? So when will they be back?
We've been in them for 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
So yeah, back around 3:07. 7.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. When we were thinking about challenges, someone mentioned that the majority of the teaching artists are college educated women, and I thought that that was so interesting because that's something that we have a majority of female teaching artists, and we're right next to a university, so with a huge drama program, so like we have incredible grad students and artists coming from that program all the time, and that's like such a strength, but also how that's such a challenge too, because that brings such a specific perspective. I thought that was interesting. It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah, and you know, and then like I think, you know, certain solutions, like, you know, oh, if you know, for example, like having people of color within the teaching artist industry and being able to find, you know, a way that you can do that is with time, creating some sort of a program where you can actually start providing those opportunities. But at the same time, it takes time and it takes resources. And a lot of organizations, you know, especially right now, aren't going to be working with not a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the ways,
so good on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways that I had to navigate, you know, right now in this time with the pandemic is like, I lost all my teaching artists. Like I couldn't give them any work. So in order for us to keep creating some sort of like program and engagement with our audiences, my staff had to teach. Like we all had to teach because I could keep them, you know, in our salary. But I couldn't afford to bring in teaching artists at that time. And so, but that takes a toll on our staff. And so then having to do the admin and teach at the same time was really hard. And we were also thinking that we were going to have to do that this summer, depending on how people responded to virtual programming. And we got lucky that there is an interest in virtual programming. So we were able to bring back, you know, around like 10 teaching artists. But I mean, you know, our summer is usually between 30 to 40 teaching artists.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like I wasn't able to give them work.
Yeah.
And right now, like
and having to make those choices on like, who do you ask to come back, you know, out of your 40, like who are the 10?
Yeah. You know, and taking into consideration seniority, like people that have been with the organization for a long time, people that are new, that have a lot of potential. And then looking at you know, the POC community of artists, like we don't have that many within the institution. And if we've had even some in the past, we've, you know, as an organization, we haven't done a very good job in nurturing those relationships. And so it takes a lot of work to be able to hold or your teaching artist. So yeah, I mean, there's just like, there's no, you know.
I feel like that's like something that the institutions often don't recognize, right? That like teaching artists just like caring for, facilitating, like supporting, communicating, like that takes a ton of time and should take more time.
Yeah, yeah.
Not revenue generating like directly. So it's like is often, I think it's something that is hard to make the case for, you know?
Yeah. I mean, just even like talking to you right now makes me think like I need to push to make a presentation about like our teaching artists and who they are and the work it takes to keep them on. Also, I mean, in terms of the work and focus it takes to even just build, you know, what is their tier system and pay rate? What is it, you know, their job description, like all the work that they have to do on top of like mentoring interns and prepping for the class and then saying like, oh no, we're canceling that class, but now we're going to put you in this class because there wasn't enough registrations. I mean, it's just like this balance, seesaw balance all the time.
And like bringing them in enough that they are, at least for like the programs that I do, it's all out in schools. So they're like alone as the representative of Childsplay, and like how do we equip them to be that person? That's a big job to take on, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to even the first session that they were talking about, like curriculum, that like even to do that, I mean, you have to pay your teaching artists for them to go and meet with the teacher at the school, get to know them. I mean, we hadn't done that before, and we started implementing it this last year, and it actually works so much better because there was a lot less of us administrative wise trying to manage that relationship. So setting it up and saying, we're going to pay you for you to go and meet or call and talk to this teaching artist so they actually knew. And then also implementing time for them to go and observe the class before they even go and teach it. It's made such a huge shift in how we set them up for success. And so much that actually we had this incident last year with one of our schools, middle school. It was a new partnership, and they were we were there to do some social change kind of curriculum using theater as the tool, and there was a student that wrote something inappropriate and made a joke about something about a race. So nobody said anything as they were doing this exercise because it was a writing exercise. And when it came back, the teaching artists realized who were two teaching artists of color. And we had to, intervene and talk to who was running programming at their school. And actually it was great because we had set that up. The communication actually flowed a little bit better. And we, and there was some consequence for that student, but also it kind of made them actually realize that there's a lot of deeper work that they have to do with their students to have, for them to have an understanding of culture before they jump into, this particular type of artistic expression and process. And also for our end, it made me question, like, well, what do I need to do to support a teaching artist of color going into a space, even, whether they're interacting with students of color or not, to give them the tools to navigate the situations and not be reactive, but reflective and responsive. So it's just like creating these constant standards or structures so that you can build on, but also pivot and change as we need to. And then, with each community, I mean, it's going to be different, but with every community, it takes time to build those relationships. wonder how people are doing. Just like, it's really hard to know. As an educator, this is really hard.
Totally. Also, is this part going to be on the recording? Let's just say.
Oh, yeah, I am recording right now. Sorry, I can pause it. They'll have like a minute to come back. Victoria and Marilyn and Pamela, looks like you just joined us. We're just sort of calling everyone back from breakout rooms right now.
I think we have, yep. Oh.
There we go. Welcome back to our larger group. We were having a great conversation in the main room around how strange as an educator to not be able to like bebop around to the breakout groups and see how everyone's doing and see if we're ready to move on. So hopefully that time was valuable. And I know we gave you a really long time to talk to each other, but we're hoping that there were some really fruitful and honest and intimate conversations that got to happen in your breakout spaces. So we wanted to go through and just whoever would like to share from your groups, if you want to put in the participant, raise your hand and just share sort of ideas, thoughts, things that came out of what you were talking about. Jennifer, we'll have you go first.
Right. Hi, everyone. So in my group, we spent a bit of time at the beginning just talking about our different models for how our teaching artist programs run. And we had the advantage of having a teaching artist in our room too. So that perspective was really rich to add to the conversation. And so some of the common themes as we spoke that sort of emerged were how we train teaching artists. So from models that use large groups of freelance teaching artists to even more full-time staff teaching artists and then smaller groups of freelance artists, just how we train and how we both preserve kind of whatever the standard of our organization, the sort of shared, whatever we think of as we always say, like, when you get a Hartford stage teaching artist in your room, there are some things that you will have no matter who the teaching artist is. So how do we preserve those things for our organizations and maintain quality in our programs while still allowing teaching artists to really, have their own styles and have their own approaches and bring their own ideas to the table. And we talked a little bit about just sustaining communities of teaching artists. How do we bring people together who may be working at lots of different theaters in their city and there was a great idea shared about just working, kind of almost having a coalition across the arts organizations in a city that are working with teaching artists so that we're all sharing and being part of the same conversation with teaching artists. And then we were talking a bit about accessibility at the end and how we ensure access in this new virtual world that we're currently in. And how maybe we use the tools that we've all discovered of communicating and convening together across distance to our advantage with our teaching artists. Anyone else from my group want to chime in at all?
Love that.
That was pretty good. You got the gist of what we were talking about.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all.
Thank you. Laura?
Group focused our conversation on action items based on the things that we had written down about the strengths of our teaching artist and artist educator groups, and then also what challenges we face or where we see opportunities for growth and improvement. So we focused on the action items in our discussion, and some of those were building into the structure of our artist educator groups and how we work at our theaters, time to reflect on the artist educator program and goals. Structurally, most of us aren't set up. We talked about how we're all pretty familiar with the process of a play and how in putting together a production of bringing a story to life, and how usually in that process time is built in to reflect, but we don't tend to do that within our education departments or within our organizations. When it comes to our artist educators, we don't tend to build in time to reflect, and how that's something, an action step that we can consider and figure out how to move forward with that. Also, how important it is to extend the invitation to be included to our artist educators. Whether or not everyone is in a position to take advantage of that invitation, that's one thing, but feeling that you are welcome and included and wanted at larger events within the theater, et cetera, is so vital to them feeling valued and knowing that they are an important part of the community. Also prioritizing funding and prioritizing making the time for change and investment in our artist educators. If it's a priority, then we need, how do we move forward and treat it and give it the time and the funding, and how do we prioritize that, and make sure that that's happening. And then we also had a great conversation around how everyone is potentially an artist and everyone is potentially an educator and everyone is also a learner. So investing in everyone as an artist, as an educator, and as a learner, as we meet them and get to know who they are, and not ruling anyone out, from the start, but acknowledging that people have all of those different things within them, and how can we nurture that in everyone.
Thank you for sharing that, Laura. This is something that I was sharing with Korbi, that during the pandemic, at SCT, we had to cut down pretty much all our teaching artists and pretty much put our programming at halt. But what ended up coming out of that as an opportunity is that I got to know my staff, how they work as a teaching artist, and how the work that they were doing in this period of time for spring, and they were learning and they were growing, set us up for success as we jumped into, now that we're gonna jump into summer programming, and now we're able to bring teaching artists that now are really being guided and led, not just by me, but the entire staff that are also teaching artists, and how beneficial that is to continue to stretch that out for ourselves. Creates a more successful platform for our teaching artists. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and to just speak to, we have been talking about on our team a lot about communication, and I think that your point of like a personal invitation to be a part of other things that the theater company is doing is really important in terms of like bringing people to those functions and making sure that they're a part of that larger ensemble. Mallory.
Hello again. So our group talked about how to recruit diverse teaching artists in an area that might be more homogenous, right? Or how to reach out slightly farther if there's an Indigenous population that we could reach out to, and what that might look like. We, in our group, we had somebody that is just starting a teaching artist program, which was kind of like a great like viewpoint for us to talk about like what has worked and what hasn't and what we wish we could improve, and hey, I'm trying to dream this thing up, what do you think? And we're able to give feedback on some things that have worked and some further challenges that we've had with ideas. So I thought that was really lovely. And then we sort of really delved into the sustainable life for teaching artists, because I think that that really, really links with recruitment, and how that looks. And I don't think we reached a definitive answer, but we threw out, the ideas of, well, could your teaching artists also partner with other arts organizations that have teaching artist teams? in the area, which I know we as a theater do, and I really appreciate when we share teaching artists with other awesome institutions in our city, but there are also a limited number of hours that a teaching artist can work, and so sometimes that leads to having to reject opportunities from one theater to serve another. We've also talked about whether it's freelance versus trying to make more salaried positions, and I've heard back and like I just go back and forth on that argument because I've seen it from both sides within my career. And would always appreciate if anybody wants to weigh in on that, of what you think is better. And then we talked about funding, because with equity goes that our opportunities will reach the people that we want them to bring them into the schools, right? So what are different ways that we have of funding our programs? And we talked about, like, here's what we do, here's where we get money from, buy-in from like schools that are bringing you in, and subsidies and places to go to get funding, but that making the funding opportunity equitable for, you know, not just that elite schools can afford it, but like Title I designation schools can have those opportunities as well.
Kelsey, your hand was up earlier. But it went away. Do you want to?
I meant to have it up. It doesn't show up in my screen, so I thought it wasn't there, and I tried again, probably took it down. Sorry. Echo a lot of what has been said already from the other groups, a lot of similarities. I think we talked mostly about funding hand in hand with training, and kind of technology hand in hand with accessibility and uncertainty of what's coming down the line. Some of the problem-solving stuff we came up with, taking advantage of this opportunity right now to where everything's kind of open to break apart and break out of and restructure, and to not be afraid and kind of let that guide you and be an opportunity. We talked a lot about partnerships. A lot of people mentioned partnering with other organizations to utilize similar, the same teaching artists, but also to pool the kind of training that we're all struggling to find money for. We talked about working with local universities, and that partnership might yield some opportunity. I think those were the main things. Did I miss anything, Morgan? All right.
And then we'll do Marcy.
Hi, y'all. I was with Sarah, and Andrew. Andrew had to duck out to teach. I would love to focus on accessibility. That was something that took quite a bit of our time. One of the big things that I know several of us are focused on or worried about is students' access to the internet, students' access to technology, as we have to look at either conducting hybrid or virtual classes going forward. And everything that comes with that. So safe spaces for students to be able to focus, digital fatigue, and what comes out of that. And this is something that came to mind briefly as we were talking for me, but I also think about both for myself and teaching artists with whom I work, what is their access? I know my access, any one of our access could blip out at a moment and get derailed. So the reliability of that is a question. Some things that came up would be how we find other ways to get lessons to students, especially, for instance, if they're sharing a family phone. Can teaching artists, can we work with them to be able to pre-record? Can we move them to YouTube? Andrew talked about working with, in Cleveland, trying to figure out how to get some teachers to be able to teach lessons on television. So that it's actually there, or what do radio lessons look like conceivably? Licensing was just, one question that came up in there. Also working with the potential digital storytelling project. Sarah Morris had also talked about how we could take, or how we could craft lessons so that students don't have to be reliant upon internet can do most of their work away from it. So what that means is basically small teaching. Being able to take something and bring it back, throw it up to the group, and be able to, in that way, eventually, hopefully create what kind of community we can. Because the other big challenge we talked about was, not being in person. What do we lose, and how can we prioritize? Sarah from Chicago Shakes brought this up. How can we prioritize community even over the content that we're trying to teach? And that seems to be the major thing to focus on. Thanks.
Thank you. In our last couple of minutes, we just wanted to open it up if there's any other comments that anyone wanted to share, or questions or things for the whole group.
I also wanted to, for those of you that are still in the room who are teaching artists, I also wanted to strongly recommend that if there are some things that we as educators or administrators we should be thinking about, this is a really great opportunity to be heard, so that we can keep those things in mind as we are making decisions. So I just wanted to also lift that up for our teaching artists in the room.
Yeah, thank you, Johamy. Stacia, is that how you pronounce your name? Stacia? You're muted.
In Traverse City, Michigan. However, that is very recent. I'm just starting this program right now. I have been a teaching artist for the last 15 years, mostly in the southeastern US. And so just a few things that I've been thinking of. One is what a struggle it is to be creating curriculum and developing curriculum for an organization that will then use to have other, then give my intellectual property to other teaching artists to use, and not being paid for creating that curriculum. Like, it's basically part of my contract to create the curriculum and teach it, but then the curriculum's kept by the organization. So as I'm developing my own teaching artist program here, I'm being really conscious of that. And I just wanted to share it in case that was something that would be helpful. Another thing is in our breakout groups, and I think Mallory was the one who actually brought this up, is the apprenticeship programs that a lot of communities have for training teaching artists can sometimes be really well served and utilized only by people with a lot of privilege, just because many of them are unpaid and or very low paid and require so much time that you really can't have a job. So if you're just graduating and you need that next step in order to become a teaching artist, it's really hard to find people who don't have parents who are supporting them in order to get that training. So I'm not really sure what the answer is to that. I'm dealing with it myself, just starting a teaching artist program, but I think it's an important thing to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry, is it Stacia? Is that how
it
is?
is.
Okay, sorry, you're cut off at the beginning, so just wanted to know. And where are you at?
I am at Parallel 45 Theater in Traverse City, Michigan.
Yes, okay, lovely. I was going to share something and they totally cut me. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I think we wanted to just take, and Johamy, jump in if you remember what you were going to say, but I think we want to just have all of us take the last couple of minutes and think about all of the conversations that we've had today and the things that we've talked about in terms of moving towards equity and the challenges that we have in inequitable systems in our organizations, and think about what is, from all the things you've talked about, what is one action item that you can commit to doing to move yourself forward in working on the things that you identified in your small groups. You just like take a minute and write that down for yourself so that you don't lose it.
I'm very inspired, I think, by just what everyone had to say in this session. I think one of the things that I am going to publicly here with all of you is share my one commitment that actually came out of just hearing you guys today. And that is to make sure that I work diligently to make sure that the board for the organization that I work with hears the voice of the teaching artist and the work. And that's just something actually that just came to me in this session, that I have not done that. And so there's an opportunity for me to be able to shift the way that we allocate resources internally, and starting with the board. So I also share that with you, so that if you have the ability to bring in the board into those conversations, or just being able to present what the challenges are with your teaching artist, there might be more room for shifting that change. So just wanted to share that with you guys. I just want to say thank you guys for your time in this. I hope that you were able to find something fruitful for yourself that you can take back to your organization. I look forward in hopefully hearing the next time that our roads, our virtual roads cross again, to be able to hear what are some of the incredible work that you're doing in the community. I think we are all holding a lot in the educational world right now. And also it is important work that we're all doing. So I thank all of you for spending this time with us today, and hopefully spending a little bit of this time with yourself. I also hope that we set up the next session up for success as we dive into the last session. And thank you so much. Korbi.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for your participation and your insight and your thoughts. And hopefully the reflection that we had today in the session is helpful for you moving forward. Great, thank you.
And thank you, Korbi, and thank you, Johamy. Wonderful session. Thank you all. Really great conversation, and very helpful in a very tangible way, I think.